There I was, standing outside my own high-end hotel, only to have my sister bar the doorway as if she ran the place, laughing in my face and claiming I couldn't even afford to walk inside. Then my mom joined in as well, backing her up. Neither of them had the faintest clue. I owned the whole building. Can you imagine standing there, your own family laughing, telling you you're not good enough, that you can't afford to even look at a place like this? And then your mother, right there, whispers for you not to embarrass them. Well, let me tell you, that night, with every single opulent, polished inch of that building, from the marble floors to the sparkling chandeliers, belonging to me, their words cut deeper than any blade. My name is Clara Maxwell, I'm 32, and that night, my father's 60th birthday, was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the moment my family finally saw me. Truly saw me for the very first time. For years, my parents, Robert and Eleanor, and my younger sister, Olivia, had dismissed my dreams. They were convinced I'd never amount to anything important. And they had absolutely no idea I owned the luxury hotel where we stood. None. Not until Olivia physically blocked my path, sneering that I couldn't possibly afford such a place. My mother's soft, cutting whisper, "Don't embarrass us," still echoed in my ears as my security chief approached. That's when everything changed. But to understand that moment, you need to know how we got there. Let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis, I was always the quiet one, the odd duck in the family. My parents had a successful accounting firm, so life was comfortable, but it was Olivia, my sister 2 years younger, who was the undeniable golden child. Popular, pretty, always excelling at the things my parents valued, appearances, traditional paths, never rocking the boat. Me? I was different. Yeah, I was introverted, but beneath that, I was fiercely ambitious in ways they just couldn't grasp. While Olivia was a cheerleader dating the football captain, I was 16, already running a small business selling customized planners. My parents? They just saw it as a cute hobby, a distraction. "Clara, why can't you focus on something practical?" Mom would sigh, finding me hunched over business plans. "Look at your sister. She's applying to all the right colleges. That's how you get ahead." Their dismissal of my entrepreneurial spirit was a constant, sharp little jab. And when I declared I wanted to study hospitality management and business, my father's disappointment was like a thick, suffocating cloud. "That's not a real degree, Abby," he'd said, his voice cold during a tense dinner. "Hotels. You want to be what? A glorified housekeeper. We didn't raise you to be so tame." Ouch. Despite their outright disapproval, I held my ground. They covered every single expense for Olivia's Ivy League business degree. For me, I worked 3 jobs. Morning shifts at a hotel front desk, afternoon classes, evening waitressing. Those years were brutal, absolutely exhausting, but they taught me more than any textbook ever could. Then, in my junior year, I met Professor Amelia Reed. She was a hospitality management professor, and she saw something in me my family never did: raw determination, an uncanny eye for overlooked opportunities in the luxury market. "You have an eye for potential, Clara," she told me. "Most students see properties as they are. You see what they could become." With Professor Reed's mentorship, I landed an internship at the Meridian Hotel Group. While other interns were fetching coffee, I was devouring their entire business model, quietly drafting improvement proposals I never expected anyone to read. 3 months in, I accidentally left one of my reports on the regional director, David Miller's desk. The next day, I was called into his office, certain I was about to be fired. Instead, he offered me a junior management position upon graduation. "This analysis," he said, tapping my report, "is better than what I pay consultants thousands for. We need people who think like you." When I called my parents with the news, their reaction was lukewarm at best. "Well, at least you'll have steady employment," Clara, Mom said, though management trainee isn't exactly executive material. Olivia just got offered a junior analyst position at Goldman Sachs, you know. And that was it. That was the moment. I stopped sharing my career milestones after that. Why bother? They didn't know when I was promoted to hotel manager at 26. They had no clue when I developed a guest loyalty program that boosted Meridian's revenue by 15%. They certainly weren't aware when I left to start my own boutique hotel consulting firm at 28. Or when, a year later, I secured enough investors to buy my first struggling property. The Athena Hotel. It had been a faded 5-star gem, bleeding money for years. I saw potential. I renovated it completely, rebranded it brilliantly, and transformed it into the most exclusive boutique hotel in Minneapolis. Within 18 months, my second property followed. Then a third. By my 32nd birthday, I owned a small but prestigious collection of luxury hotels across the Midwest. The Athena was my crown jewel, the penthouse suite, my personal residence. My parents and Olivia remained utterly oblivious. In their minds, I was still just struggling in some middle management hotel job, barely scraping by. I never corrected them. Partly because they never asked, and partly because their assumptions revealed so much more about them than about me. My closest confidant during all this was Alex Chun, the brilliant security chief I hired for the Athena. Former military intelligence, cybersecurity degree, Alex became my right-hand man. Our friendship was built on mutual respect and a shared vision. I dated occasionally, sure, but my focus was my empire. These hotels were my children, my staff, my family. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built the very thing my biological family failed to provide, a supportive environment where achievement was celebrated, not dismissed. This was the backdrop as my father's 60th birthday approached. I hadn't been home for a family gathering in 2 years, making excuses that weren't entirely untrue. But this milestone felt important. Maybe, just maybe, I thought it was a chance to bridge the massive gap between the person my family thought I was and the woman I had become. What I didn't anticipate was how wide that chasm had grown, or how spectacularly it would collapse. 2 months before the birthday, I got a group text from my mother, surprise dinner for Dad's 60th, looking at Giovanni or the Athena Hotel restaurant, thoughts? I nearly dropped my phone. The Athena. My Athena. For a split second, I considered telling them everything. But something stopped me. Years of conditioning, perhaps. Or the fleeting thought of a much more impactful revelation. The Athena has a great reputation, I texted back, playing it cool. Their private dining room is supposed to be exceptional. It's very expensive, Mom replied. Probably out of our budget. And yours, obviously. That stung. Oh, it stung. But I was used to it. I could help with costs, I offered. We don't need charity, Clara. Your sister is doing very well at her firm and has offered to cover half. We'll figure out the rest. I bit back a sharp retort. Instead, I suggested I could look into industry discounts. My mother reluctantly agreed. That was my opening. I immediately called Liam O'Connell, my general manager at the Athena. Liam, I said, my family is planning my father's birthday dinner at our restaurant next month. They have no idea I own the place. Liam chuckled. Seriously, that's either cosmic irony or fantastic timing. A bit of both, I replied. Here's what I need. They'll call to make a reservation for the Maxwell party. Give them our best private dining room, the Winston Suite. Full service, premium, everything. But when they ask for the price, quote them exactly half. I'll cover the difference anonymously. And should we acknowledge you as the owner when you arrive? Liam asked. I paused. Crucial detail. No. Treat me like any other guest initially. I'll find the right moment. Over the next few weeks, I watched the reservation process unfold. My mother called endlessly, haggling over details, questioning the surprisingly reasonable rate. My executive chef developed a special menu. I arranged for my father's favorite wines. Everything was set. A week before the event, Olivia called me directly. A rare occurrence. "So, you're actually coming to Dad's birthday?" She sounded completely skeptical. "Of course," I said, "it's an important milestone." "Mom says you got some kind of discount at the Athena. How did you manage that? It's not like you're a VIP there." Again, the perfect moment to come clean. But Olivia's tone, that casual, dismissive tone, it just made me want to wait. "I've done some consulting work for hotel groups," I said vaguely. "Industry courtesy, right?" She didn't even bother hiding her disbelief. "Well, try to dress appropriately. The Athena is pretty upscale. Maybe I can lend you something if you don't have anything suitable." I glanced down at the custom Valentino dress I was wearing for a business meeting, and smiled to myself. "I'll manage. Just don't embarrass us," she added before hanging up. Oh, the irony. The absolute irony. The night before the dinner, my mother called. "Abigail," she began, "we've had to add a few people. The Robertsons, the Clarks, and Olivia's bringing her new boyfriend, Noah. He's a junior partner at her firm." "Very impressive." "That sounds fine," I said. "The room can accommodate up to 20 people." "How would you know that?" Her suspicion was immediate. I looked at their website when you mentioned booking there," I recovered quickly. "Well, anyway, with the additional guests, we're concerned about cost. We're thinking it might be best if you handle the tip for the servers instead. That way, you can participate without stretching your budget too thin." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Slowly. "Sure, Mom," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I'd be happy to take care of the gratuity." "Wonderful. And Clara, please be punctual. The reservation is at 7 sharp. You know how your father hates tardiness." After hanging up, I sat in my office overlooking the Minneapolis skyline. Part of me felt childish for not simply telling them the truth. But another part, a deeper, more resentful part, recognized this as the perfect opportunity to address years of dismissal and disrespect. I called Alex and outlined my plan. His deep laugh echoed through the phone. "You're sure about this approach?" he asked. "It's a bit theatrical." "Sometimes a demonstration is more effective than an explanation," I replied. "Besides, they've written their own script for this scenario. I'm just following their lead to its natural conclusion." "As always, I got your back," Alex assured me. "Tomorrow will certainly be memorable." That night, I slept in my penthouse suite, high above the hotel my family believed I couldn't afford to dine in, let alone own. Tomorrow would indeed change everything. And I was ready. The evening of my father's birthday arrived with perfect, almost theatrical timing. A light snowfall had begun, dusting the Athena's historic facade with a crystalline glow. I'd arranged to arrive separately, claiming a last-minute work commitment. In reality, I wanted to observe their entrance from the hotel security cameras. Dressed in a midnight blue Da Vinci gown, simple, elegant, but unmistakably expensive, I sat in my private office, watching my family arrive a full 40 minutes early. My mother, in her 10-year-old St. John's suit, immediately began inspecting everything, her usual critical gaze sweeping over the lobby. My father looked uncomfortable but impressed, adjusting his tie, gazing up at the restored ceiling murals I'd commissioned. Olivia arrived moments later with Noah, both dressed like they were attending a gala. She immediately took charge, speaking loudly to the concierge, gesturing dramatically. I watched as Liam, my GM, personally greeted them and escorted them to the Winston suite, where champagne and appetizers awaited. Even on the small screen, my mother's surprise was evident, far more than the reasonable package she'd been quoted. Miss Maxwell, my executive chef, Elise, appeared at my door. Everything is prepared. The wine has been decanting for 3 hours, and we've included your father's favorite bourbon for after dinner. Perfect, Elise. Thank you. I stood, smoothing my dress. This was it. Time to make my entrance. As planned, I texted Alex to take his position near the grand entrance. Then, I took my private elevator, exited the hotel entirely, and walked around to approach from the main entrance like any other guest. The timing had to be precise. I arrived just as the remaining guests were checking in. Standing slightly back, I watched as the Robertsons and Clarks were directed toward the private dining room. Just as I prepared to follow, Olivia emerged from a hallway, her eyes landing on me. They narrowed with immediate judgment. The smile that spread across her face wasn't friendly. It was that same condescending expression I'd seen countless times. "Clara, you actually showed up." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my dress, my shoes, the simple but obviously real diamond earrings. "Wow, you borrowed something nice." "Hello, Olivia." "You look lovely," I replied, refusing to engage. She frowned, perhaps disappointed I hadn't given her more ammunition. "Mom was worried you'd back out or show up looking like you just left work at wherever it is you're working these days." "I'm exactly where I want to be career-wise," I said honestly. "Right." She glanced over my shoulder toward the entrance. Her eyes widened. "Oh, you didn't. Please tell me you didn't bring a date to Dad's birthday." "This is a family event, Clara." I turned to see Alex entering, impeccable in his tailored suit. Before I could even begin to explain that he wasn't joining us, my mother appeared beside Olivia. "Clara, finally. We've been here for ages." She barely looked at me, her attention immediately shifting to Alex. "And who is this? We didn't arrange for extra seating." "This is..." I began, but Alex smoothly interjected. "Good evening, Mrs. Maxwell. I'm Alex Chun, head of security for the Athena Hotel. I just needed a brief word with Miss Maxwell." My mother's expression shifted instantly from irritation to pure, mortified embarrassment. "Security? Clara, what have you done now?" Before I could respond, Olivia stepped directly in front of me, physically blocking my path toward the restaurant. "Is there a problem with her reservation?" she asked Alex, speaking about me as if I weren't present. "We can cover her portion if that's the issue." My mother moved closer, her voice dropping to that particular whisper that somehow carried perfectly despite its lowered volume. "Clara, don't embarrass the family. If you're having financial problems again, you should have said something before coming to a place like this." The lobby had grown quiet. Several guests and staff paused, observing the unfolding drama. Liam had appeared near the restaurant entrance, watching with barely concealed amusement. He caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in question. I gave him an almost imperceptible nod. "Actually," Alex said, his professional tone unwavering. "I wanted to inform Miss Maxwell that her special requests for the evening have been arranged according to her specifications." "Special requests?" My mother looked confused. "What special requests?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "Mom, she probably asked for the cheapest wine option or something. Can we please go back to the party? Noah is telling Dad about his new BMW." She turned, attempting to guide my mother away while still blocking my path. That's when Alex cleared his throat. Loudly. "Mrs. Maxwell, Miss Olivia, perhaps you're unaware that you're currently preventing the owner of this establishment from entering her own property." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother froze mid-step. Olivia slowly turned back toward me, her expression caught between disbelief and dawning horror. "Excuse me." My mother finally managed. Liam chose that perfect moment to approach, extending his hand to me with practiced deference. "Miss Maxwell, everything is prepared for your father's celebration. The chef has included all your requested items, and the 1962 Bordeaux you selected from your personal collection is exceptional with the prime rib." My mother's face had drained of color. "Your personal collection?" I smiled, finally stepping around my stunned sister. "Yes, Mom. From my wine cellar here at the Athena. I've been meaning to tell you both. I own this hotel, and the Meridian downtown, and 4 others across the Midwest." Olivia's mouth opened and closed without sound. My mother grabbed the nearest chair for support. That's not possible," she finally whispered. "And yet, here we are." I gestured toward the restaurant. "Shall we join Dad and the others? I believe we have a celebration to continue." As we walked toward the private dining room, the hotel staff we passed all greeted me by name, with the respect reserved not just for any owner, but one they genuinely admired. The whispered, "Good evening, Miss Maxwell," and "Lovely to see you, Miss Maxwell," created a symphony of recognition that made denial impossible. Just before entering the Winston suite, Olivia grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "Why didn't you tell us?" she hissed, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I looked at her hand until she released me, then straightened my sleeve before meeting her eyes. "You never asked," I said simply. "None of you ever asked." Then I pushed open the doors to greet my surprised father, whose expression shifted from confusion to pure astonishment as the staff welcomed me not as a guest, but as their boss. The evening had only just begun. The rest of the birthday dinner unfolded like a surreal play where half the cast had received an entirely different script. My father, initially shocked into silence by the staff's deference, recovered more quickly than my mother or sister. His surprise gradually transformed into something resembling pride. "So, this is why you've been so secretive about your work?" he asked during a quiet moment near the dessert table. "You own this entire place?" "This one, and several others," I confirmed, watching his eyes widen further. "Why keep it from us?" There was genuine confusion in his voice, without the sharp, defensive edge my mother and Olivia displayed. I considered my answer carefully. "At first," I explained, "it was because I wasn't sure I'd succeed. Then, when I did, it became clear that you all had a fixed idea of who I was and what I was capable of. After a while, it just seemed easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe." He nodded slowly, looking troubled. "I suppose we haven't given you much reason to share your successes." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of their dismissive treatment I'd ever received from any family member. Before I could respond, my mother approached, her social mask firmly back in place after her initial shock. "Clara," she said, her tone brittle, her smile fixed, "the Clarks are asking about the historical photographs in the hallway. Since you apparently know everything about this place, perhaps you could enlighten them." As I excused myself, I overheard my father asking her, "Did you have any idea about this?" "Of course not," she snapped. "She's deliberately kept us in the dark to create this spectacle." The evening continued in this vein. My mother maintained a rigid pleasantness, shooting me looks that fluctuated between disbelief and outright betrayal. Olivia oscillated between awkward attempts to align herself with my newfound status and sullen withdrawal. My father, though, grew increasingly fascinated with each revelation about my business empire. By the time dessert, a custom bourbon caramel cake for my father, was served, the party had effectively split, those who found my success intriguing, and those who found it deeply threatening. When the celebration finally concluded around midnight, I instructed Liam to ensure all guests received luxury gift baskets and comfortable transportation home. My father embraced me warmly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Abby." A moment I'd waited a lifetime for. But then he was quickly ushered away by my tight-lipped mother. Olivia lingered, clearly struggling with what to say. Finally, she managed. So all those times we thought you couldn't afford to join vacations or contribute to family gifts, I was building this, I finished for her, gesturing to the elegant surroundings. And I did send gifts. Substantial ones. The Hawaiian vacation for Mom and Dad's anniversary last year. The Christmas checks. All. Everything. I've also scheduled meetings with my attorney tomorrow to remove the anonymity from several gifts I've given the family over the years. The Hawaiian vacation. The Christmas checks. The contributions to your retirement fund. His eyes widened. The extra investment returns from the past 3 years. That was you. Yes. I've been supplementing your retirement account since I sold my second hotel. I wanted you and Mom to be comfortable, but I knew she wouldn't accept direct help from me. My father looked stunned, then deeply ashamed. All this time, we've been treating you like the family underachiever, and you've been quietly supporting us. I didn't do it for gratitude or recognition, I clarified. I did it because I could, and because, despite everything, you're my family. But moving forward, I want transparency. No more anonymous gifts. No more pretending to be less successful than I am. He agreed. Our conversation shifted to his birthday. He genuinely enjoyed it. Once the initial shock wore off, he admitted, particularly seeing the respect my staff had for me. Your mother kept saying you must have tricked us somehow, that it couldn't possibly be your hotel. He shook his head. I told her she needed to accept the reality in front of her. That didn't go over well. After he left, promising to process everything, I spent the afternoon in back-to-back meetings. My attorney, Sarah Jenkins, helped me draft formal letters documenting past financial gifts and establishing parameters for future family interactions. My financial advisor, Marcus Williams, ensured my family-related financial decisions wouldn't inadvertently impact my business. And Dr. Stone, my therapist, helped me prepare psychologically, especially for my mother, who I knew would be the most resistant. By the end of the day, Operation Family Reset, as Alex jokingly called it, was fully developed. I felt prepared, centered, and for the first time when dealing with family, completely in control of my own narrative. I instructed Liam to inform the front desk that my mother and sister were to be admitted if they arrived, but not given any information about my whereabouts or schedule. Sure enough, my mother appeared unannounced the following morning. Mrs. Maxwell, Liam greeted her with perfect professional courtesy. Do you have an appointment with Miss Maxwell today? Her indignation was visible, even on the security monitor where I was watching. I don't need an appointment. I'm her mother. I understand, but Miss Maxwell is currently in meetings. I'd be happy to check her availability later today or schedule something for tomorrow. The boundary. So simple. So standard for anyone else. It was clearly shocking to her. After several minutes of increasingly agitated protest, she finally left, but not before informing Liam that she would deal with Clara directly about this ridiculous situation. She called immediately. This time, I answered. Hello, Mom. What on earth is going on, Clara? I just came to see you at this hotel of yours, and I was treated like some sort of stranger. You were treated like any other visitor without an appointment, I corrected gently. I run a business, Mom. I have meetings, responsibilities, schedules. I'm your mother. I shouldn't need an appointment to see my own daughter. Would you drop by Olivia's law firm and expect to be immediately shown to her office? The silence on the other end told me the point had registered. This is different, she finally said, but with less conviction. It's really not, I countered. My business, my career, my professional standing, they all deserve the same respect you've always given Olivia's. Another pause. We need to discuss what happened at your father's birthday. As a family. I'm happy to talk with you, Mom, but not until you're ready to acknowledge some uncomfortable truths about how you've treated me and my career choices over the years. This isn't about it's exactly about that, I interrupted firmly. I'm not angry, and I'm not trying to punish anyone, but I am establishing boundaries that should have been in place long ago. By the end of our conversation, we'd agreed to meet the following week with Dr. Stone present. It wasn't an ideal solution from my mother's perspective, but she'd finally recognized I was no longer the daughter who could be dismissed or manipulated. Olivia proved more adaptable, if not more sincere. She arrived at the Athena that afternoon, Noah in tow, requesting a tour of my sister's amazing hotel. The pivot from condescension to sudden, transparent sisterly pride was almost laughable, but I decided to accept it as a starting point. As I showed them around, Olivia peppered me with questions about the business, clientele, profit margins, clearly calculating the full extent of my success. Noah seemed genuinely impressed, asking thoughtful questions about the industry and my management philosophy. You know, Olivia said as we concluded the tour in the rooftop garden I'd installed, we should talk about potential collaborations. The firm is always looking for impressive venues for client events, and family discount rates would be a win-win. And there it was. The true purpose of her visit. Not reconciliation, but determining how my success could benefit her. I don't offer family discount rates, I said pleasantly, but firmly. The Athena maintains consistent pricing for all clients, but your firm is welcome to book through our corporate events department like any other business. Her smile faltered slightly. But surely for your own sister. I value our relationship too much to complicate it with business entanglements, I interrupted smoothly. I've found that clear boundaries between family and business are essential for both to thrive. Noah nodded appreciatively at this, earning a sharp look from Olivia. The rest of their visit passed uneventfully, and by the time they left, Olivia had received the same message I delivered to our parents. I was open to a relationship, but only one based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. That evening, I had dinner with Alex in my penthouse. Phase 1 complete, he said, raising his glass in a toast. How does it feel? I considered the question carefully. Like I'm finally the author of my own story, instead of a secondary character in someone else's. The challenging family meeting with my mother still lay ahead, but for the first time, I felt fully prepared for whatever came next. This wasn't about revenge or retaliation for years of dismissal. It was about reclaiming my narrative and establishing the respect that should have been there all along. Sometimes, I reflected, the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's living your truth so completely that their opinion becomes irrelevant. The family meeting with my mother took place in a neutral setting, a private conference room at Dr. Stone's office building. My mother arrived 15 minutes early, dressed for a business negotiation, her posture rigid with defensive energy. My father arrived 5 minutes later, nodding to me with cautious optimism. Dr. Stone welcomed us, establishing ground rules, no interrupting, no personal attacks, focus on I statements. My mother's skeptical expression made it clear she viewed this as unnecessary psychobabble, but she nodded agreement. I began calmly, articulating my experience as the less favored child, the consistent dismissal of my career, the minimizing of my achievements while celebrating Olivia's. I gave specific examples, factually, without any emotional drama. While I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college, you paid Olivia's full tuition and housing at Cornell, I stated. When I landed my first management position, you changed the subject to Olivia's new apartment. When I called to share that I'd started my own consulting firm, Dad asked if I had a backup plan for when it fails. My mother's face flushed as I continued. When I finished, Dr. Stone turned to her. Eleanor, would you like to respond? My mother straightened, her voice tightly controlled. I think there have been some misinterpretations of our intentions. We've always wanted what's best for both our daughters. Perhaps we expressed more concern about Clara's choices because they seemed riskier, less conventional. The concern wasn't the issue, I clarified. It was the assumption of failure, the lack of support, the constant comparison to Olivia's more appropriate path. We supported you. My mother's composure cracked slightly. We gave you a good home, a good education through high school. We did make Clara pay her own way through college while covering everything for Olivia, my father interjected quietly. My mother turned to him, betrayal evident. That was different. Olivia was at an Ivy League school. The expenses were much higher. All the more reason I might have needed help, I pointed out. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. My mother was alternately defensive and dismissive. My father was increasingly reflective and acknowledging. I remained steady in my perspective. Dr. Stone guided us skillfully. The breaking point came when my mother finally voiced what seemed to be her core grievance. Why did you hide your success from us? Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to learn about your hotels in front of all our friends? To realize our daughter has been lying to us for years. I wasn't lying, I replied evenly. I simply stopped sharing. There's a difference. But why? She pressed, genuine confusion breaking through her anger. Because every time I did share, you diminished it. After years of that, it became clear that my success didn't fit the narrative you had created about who I was and what I was capable of. It was less painful to keep it to myself than to have it consistently devalued. Something in my measured response seemed to finally penetrate. My mother fell silent, her gaze dropping to her hands. I never thought of it that way, she said finally, her voice uncharacteristically small. I always saw myself as the practical one, the realist, keeping everyone's feet on the ground. For Olivia, you were her cheerleader. For me, you were the voice of caution and doubt, I said gently. Both daughters needed both responses at different times. My father reached for my mother's hand, squeezing it. She's right, Eleanor. We've treated them differently from the beginning. We've expected Clara to fail and Olivia to succeed, and both have fulfilled our expectations. Olivia by following our approved path, and Clara by succeeding despite our lack of faith in her. The admission. So simple, so profound. It hung in the air. My mother's eyes filled with tears, something I'd rarely witnessed. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. It starts with acknowledgement, Dr. Stone offered. Which you've begun today, and it continues with new patterns of interaction moving forward. We spent the next hour outlining these patterns. My parents would respect my professional boundaries, acknowledge my achievements without qualification, and cease comparing me to Olivia. I would maintain honesty about my life and success rather than withdraw. We would build a relationship based on who we actually were. And Olivia? My mother asked. She's struggling with all this too. My relationship with Olivia is separate, I explained. We'll need to find our own path forward. As the session concluded, Dr. Stone suggested we take a week to process everything. My father hugged me warmly. My mother, after a moment's hesitation, approached more cautiously. Your hotel is beautiful, she said, the compliment clearly difficult for her. I'd like to understand more about what you've built if you're willing to share. It was a small step, but a significant one. I'd like that, I replied. 3 days later, Olivia requested a meeting alone, without Noah or our parents. We met at a small cafe, neutral territory, for a conversation that proved even more challenging than the one with our parents. I don't understand why you're doing this, she began without preamble, creating all this family drama, making Mom and Dad feel terrible. I'm not doing anything to them, I replied calmly. I'm simply establishing honest, respectful relationships after years of the opposite. They've always supported us. They've always supported you, I corrected. There's a difference. Olivia's expression shifted from indignation to uncertainty. I never asked to be the favorite. I know, I said, but you never questioned it either. When they praised your conventional choices while dismissing my entrepreneurial ones. When they funded your education while making me work 3 jobs. When they celebrated your achievements while minimizing mine, you accepted it as the natural order of things. She fell silent, stirring her latte with uncharacteristic intensity. I didn't realize how different things were for you, she finally admitted. From my perspective, you always seemed so independent, like you didn't need anyone's approval or help. I became independent because I had to be, I explained. And then that independence was used against me as proof I didn't need the support you automatically received. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, more honest than any we'd had in our adult lives. Unlike our parents, Olivia never fully acknowledged her role, but she did express a tentative willingness to establish a more equitable relationship. I can't promise I'll get it right immediately, she said. Old habits and all that. I'm not expecting perfection, I assured her. Just effort and awareness. The following week brought a series of small, but profoundly significant shifts. My father called to ask detailed questions about my business model, genuinely interested. My mother sent a handwritten note apologizing for her reaction at the birthday dinner, and requesting a proper tour of the Athena. Olivia even texted about meeting for lunch, without any ulterior motive of business connections. Alex observed these changes with measured optimism. Family dynamics don't transform overnight, he cautioned. There will be backsliding. I know, I acknowledged. But for the first time, I feel like they're seeing me, the real me, not the version that fits their predetermined narrative. And if they revert to type, he asked, ever the pragmatist. Then I maintain my boundaries, I said with newfound certainty. The difference now is that I've made those boundaries explicit. So crossing them becomes a choice, rather than an unconscious habit. The true test came a month later when my mother organized a family dinner at their home. I arrived prepared for a potential regression, but was pleasantly surprised. My mother had proudly placed several framed articles about me and my hotels on the living room wall, right alongside Olivia's law school diploma. My father asked for my opinion on a potential investment opportunity, valuing my acumen in a way he never had. Even Olivia made an effort, mentioning a client who had stayed at the Athena and raved about the experience. The most telling moment came during dessert, when my mother mentioned a fundraising gala she was helping organize. We'd love to have your support, Clara, she said. Then, catching herself, she added, not because of your resources, but because it's a cause I think would interest you given your involvement with women's entrepreneurship programs. It was a small adjustment in language, but it represented a significant shift in perception. She was acknowledging my philanthropic interests, rather than just my financial capacity. Seeing me as a person with values and priorities, rather than merely a resource. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey. The revelation at my father's birthday dinner had been dramatic, theatrical even. But the real work had happened in the quieter moments afterward, the honest conversations, the established boundaries, the gradual rebuilding of relationships on more authentic foundations. The revenge I'd initially contemplated after years of dismissal had transformed into something far more valuable, genuine recognition and respect. Not because I owned luxury hotels or had achieved financial success, but because I had finally demanded acknowledgement of my worth beyond those external markers. The family dynamics weren't perfect, nor would they ever be. But they had shifted from automatic dismissal to conscious effort. And in family relationships, that movement represented a revolution of sorts. As I entered my penthouse that night, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The view of Minneapolis spread before me, lights twinkling against the night sky, a visual reminder of all I had built, despite the doubts and dismissals. Some might say living well is the best revenge. But I had discovered something more powerful. Living authentically is the best resolution. 6 months after the revelations, I stood on my penthouse balcony, watching the sun set over Minneapolis. The city glowed golden, a beautiful backdrop for reflecting on how dramatically my family relationships had transformed. The changes hadn't been instantaneous, of course. There were moments when my mother slipped into old patterns, when Olivia's competitive nature resurfaced. But now, these instances were recognized, addressed, and corrected. My relationship with my father had improved the most. Free from my mother's stronger personality, he'd begun visiting the Athena, genuinely curious about my operations. He even offered accounting advice, not with the patronizing tone of the past, but with professional respect. "I never gave you enough credit," he admitted during one of our monthly lunch meetings. "I was so focused on traditional paths to success that I couldn't recognize you were pioneering a better one." My mother's transformation was more measured, but still deeply meaningful. She no longer dismissed my career or compared me unfavorably to Olivia. "I've been recommending the Athena to everyone at the country club," she told me proudly during a recent call. Cynthia Blackwell was positively envious when I mentioned my daughter owns it. There was still an element of vicarious pride, sure, but the improvement from dismissal to imperfect support was significant. Olivia and I had established a more honest, if sometimes awkward, relationship. The competitive dynamic hadn't completely disappeared, but acknowledging it had diminished its power. We even collaborated on a charity event hosted at the Athena. "We make a good team when we're not trying to outdo each other," she observed. "We always could have," I'd replied. "We just never gave ourselves the chance." Beyond family, my professional life flourished. I acquired 2 more properties, expanding my portfolio to 9 luxury hotels. Alex was promoted to Chief Operations Officer for the entire group. Most significantly, I established the Maxwell Women in Hospitality Foundation, providing scholarships and mentorship to young women pursuing careers in the industry. "You're creating the support system you never had," Dr. Stone observed, turning personal disappointment into structural change. I agreed. "It feels more constructive than just being angry about the past." My personal life evolved, too. After years of prioritizing my career, I started dating Ethan Rhodes, an architectural restoration specialist I met during a Chicago renovation. Unlike previous relationships, Ethan understood the demands of building something meaningful. "Balance isn't about equal time," he'd said. "It's about equal respect for what matters to each person." That philosophy allowed our relationship to flourish alongside my business. As the sun disappeared, I heard my penthouse door open. It was Alex, for our weekly strategy dinner. "Contemplating your empire?" he asked, joining me on the balcony with 2 glasses of wine. "Contemplating the journey," I corrected, accepting the glass. "Professional and personal. Any regrets about how it all unfolded?" he asked, referring to the dramatic revelation. "I think the drama was necessary," I admitted. My family had spent decades comfortably dismissing me. Comfort needed to be disrupted before real change could begin. Alex nodded. "Speaking of family, your mother called the front desk today. She actually made an appointment to see you next week, rather than demanding immediate access." I laughed. Progress comes in many forms. Later that evening, after reviewing expansion plans, I checked my email. A message from my father. He had attached an article about female entrepreneurs and hospitality that featured me prominently. "So proud of what you've built," his message read. "Not just the hotels, but the foundation, the mentorship programs, all of it. You've created success on your own terms, which is far more impressive than following someone else's blueprint. Olivia and I were talking yesterday about how your approach to business has inspired her to consider more creative directions in her legal career. You've influenced all of us more than you know." The message brought unexpected tears to my eyes, not from sadness or a lingering hurt, but from the simple, profound power of finally being seen and valued for exactly who I was. The truth I discovered was that revenge had never been what I truly wanted. The fantasy of making my family regret their dismissal was satisfying in the abstract. But the reality of building healthier relationships had proven far more fulfilling. What I'd really sought wasn't their regret, but their recognition, not of my material success, but of my worth as an individual. That recognition had finally come, imperfectly, but genuinely. Not because I'd forced it, but because I'd created space for it through honest communication and firm boundaries. The greatest revenge against those who underestimate you isn't making them sorry. It's making their opinion irrelevant to your sense of self-worth. My family's validation, now freely given, was welcome, but no longer necessary. I had built that validation from within, brick by brick, alongside the hotels that stood as physical manifestations of my vision and determination. As I prepared for bed, I thought about the young women in my foundation program, many facing their own struggles with doubt and dismissal. The most valuable thing I could offer wasn't just financial support or connections, but the understanding that other people's limitations should never become their own. True success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by the life you build on your own terms. It's measured by the peace you find within that truth. This journey taught me so much about family, self-worth, and what truly matters. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been underestimated, only to find your greatest strength in proving yourself right, not to others, but to yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. I really want to know.